We have talked a little bit about where jQuery comes from, so I'm going to skip through a couple of these first slides, just so you're aware. jQuery is quite used still in the industry. Those who are using Angular, jQuery, Vue, and React, things like that, have shied away from using jQuery because they prefer not manipulating the DOM directly. But as you go out in the industry, it's kind of like Bootstrap. You're going to see it everywhere. You're going to see jQuery everywhere because it's been really the de facto standard for many years. Okay. As we talked about, jQuery, it's just a power tool that lets you wrap DOM objects and gives you different functions, allows you to handle events easier, do animations, again, to do AJAX or external HTTP calls really easily. It's also cross-browser, and that's the main reason. So instead of writing plain old JavaScript that may or may not be compatible across all the browsers, we use jQuery, and it's guaranteed to be cross-compatible. Okay. Where do you get jQuery? You go to jQuery.com. Okay. And there's various versions, but I just recommend that you go and do the CDN link from either Microsoft or Google with the latest version. You'll get those links on jQuery.com. There is a handy sort of fallback trick, which I haven't really taught you guys about fallbacks yet. But for example, if you can say this is a trick in JavaScript, window.jQuery. So if jQuery is defined, meaning the jQuery library actually is installed and running, or document.write. So in other words, if jQuery is not there, it'll run this code here, which will actually write a jQuery.js, basically one that you've downloaded physically. It's sort of a fallback in case the CDN fails. You can load a local file. Okay. That or is called a short circuit. So if this fails, then the second one won't actually do anything, which is nice. Okay. Oh, sorry, if it fails, right? Yeah. Oh, sorry. If it fails, it does the second one. If it's true, it does not do the second one. Sorry, I got that wrong. All right. With jQuery, again, we use two kinds of wrappers. You can either use the wrapper like this with jQuery or the $. We prefer $, so that's what you should use. Okay. Essentially, you're putting a wrapper around a DOM object when you're using jQuery. For example, document.forms, .myform. Okay, you can wrap your form in a jQuery object, catch the submit event. Okay, you can also pass CSS selectors to jQuery constructors. That's a nice thing about jQuery. All you need to know is CSS to be able to do jQuery, because every single selector is a CSS selector. Okay. A jQuery object is going to contain a collection of DOM nodes, so you can actually select multiple nodes or a single node. Okay. Once you have that live object, you can call any of its functions. So we've talked about the $document.ready. This is replacing the window.add event listener. Sorry. Load, listening for the load event. This one is the jQuery version of that. You write the document and then you do the ready, pass in a function, and then that's where you're going to do all your startup. So for your project, you're going to create one of these. You're going to then call your initialization code for your validation library. So again, the ready event is the jQuery event, which fires when your web page is completely finished loading. We learned about a couple things, script in the script tag before, script defer and async. If you said defer, that would generally work. You wouldn't need this ready, but it's not necessarily fully browser compatible. So I would just always use the standard jQuery wrapper. That will make sure that your code is run on any browser. Okay, let's move forward. Again, selectors, okay. In JavaScript, you would get this text box using get element by ID. It's kind of wordy, right? In fact, you have get element by ID, get elements by class name, get elements by name. You've used some of those already. Again, they're just very wordy, and also kind of let's see. Once you've got your collection of objects, you have to loop through it. Remember how I had to loop through when we created events on a collection of DOM objects? With jQuery, you can just get a collection of objects and set a single callback for all of them, which is nice. Okay. So again, you put the selector in, you take that here. So here's some examples. Get elements by tag name, li, goes to just this. Oops. Sorry. You can just do $wrap li. That'll get all li elements on the page. This one, get element by ID. All you do is you just pass the select the ID with the pound sign. Class name, same thing with a dot. $div gets all div elements. $td gets all td elements. Okay. You can combine multiple element types in the same collection. So this is just like the CSS selector you could do in your CSS file. You can apply a rule to div, spans, and ps. Here you can get all div, spans, and paragraph objects in one go. Use your child selectors here so you get all div elements that are children or that are descendants of a TD. Of course, if you want the children, you have to use the greater than sign. Okay. Same thing here. This will select all ULs that have the navbar class. If you have a question, again, just speak up. Let's see. Again, you're familiar with the CSS here. This, I can select all LIs. I can say .css, background color yellow. This actually will affect the entire collection, which is really nice. Okay, and so you're going to see that all the LIs get a background color. Okay. Let's do the same thing with an ID selector. So here I'm just selecting item number 5, setting its background color. It's going to go and just set the one LI with the ID item 5. Same thing with classes. I've got .class A. In this case, going back to our code, these all have alternating classes, class A, B, and C. So you'll see that with this one, when you select class A, only the items of class A get selected. A quick review of your attribute selectors. Some of you had fun with those on the exam, and we haven't talked about the exam. We can have a discussion about it a little later if you'd like. But this says basically element, and then use the brackets, attribute equal value. That will select any element with a particular attribute. We haven't talked about this yet, but right here you see I've got div foo equal abc. That's a custom attribute. In other words, the programmer, I created it, and that's the cool thing about HTML. I can create my own attributes and give them values and then get them later. So in case you need to store some data on an element, you can just create an attribute, store the data there. If you need to go back and get it later, again, you can use the adder function in jQuery to grab the value of it. I've used this, for example, in the case where I am validating 2 passwords. And in my case, what I would do is I would just put an attribute called buddy. And my buddy, and then the ID of the other password field. And then he would have a buddy pointing to me. And so my validation code would just check, if you got a buddy, go validate that you're the same or you're equal to that buddy. And so anyway, there's lots of ways to use those. Just be aware that they're there. So again, attribute specifiers. If you do caret equal, search for attributes that start with a given value. Okay. Dollar equal searches for attributes that end with a given value. Star equal, search for an attribute that contains any given value. Okay. All right. Feel free to speak up. One thing you may not be aware of too. So if you say :input as a CSS selector, that selects all input types, not just actual input tags. It's like input, select, text area button, images, radio buttons, checkboxes, anything like on the form, for example. I can do :input and that would select all different input types on my form. You can also do element :contains, and get some sort of text. So if the text of an LI is item 6, I can say LI contains item 6, and that would select that particular LI. So that can be handy sometimes as well. So also special properties we can use: :first child, :odd, :even. That's handy when you have like a table with a header and then you want to have odd even rows. You just do LI :odd, you set one color, LI even, set another color, LI first child, you'd set a separate color. And then you'd get your table. Any questions so far? Feel free to speak up. Okay. All right. This is meant to be a review, so I don't expect too many questions, but hopefully you learned something in this quick review. If you want to iterate, you use the each method in jQuery, so $.each, secret code in there. The nice thing about that is inside that function, that this refers to the DOM element itself. You can wrap this with the jQuery and use jQuery functions as well, as so. Okay. So for example, I'm going to go through all the LIs and I'm going to add title Kazoom, which is kind of dumb and not that relevant, but it'll add that to every single element, and you'll see that as you mouse over these elements, that the title is the little popover that pops up by default. Okay. And again, you can go through, use this, wrap it, and then set the CSS if you'd like. Okay. A couple of parameters that you find on each. One is index. The next one, if I had two parameters, it would be the index and the actual value. But here, what I'm saying, oops, going back, sorry. The index is the zero-based index in the collection of LIs. And so I'm going to go this CSS background color, and you see I've got an array of colors here. And so I'm getting colors of index mod 4. Okay, so when you do the mod operation, you're going to get a remainder 0, 1, 2, or 3, and that's going to apply the color for each of the different rows. So that's what you're going to get. Every row is going to get a different color based on the remainder. You can also pass in the element. Okay, so instead of saying this, we could just say element. It's the same thing. Okay. In this case, let's see. The adder method is another one we can use. This will set any attribute, set or get any attribute. So if I specify style and background color yellow, that will set the style attribute background, and then the value will be that background color yellow. I could go and I could set my buddy attribute or my foo attribute, any attribute you can set and give it any value. In this case, instead of using CSS, I'm just applying the style directly. CSS is probably preferred. If you call adder without any parameter, it'll get, if you call adder with just the name of the attribute, it'll get you the value. If you pass in a second parameter, it will set the value. Okay. Luckily in JavaScript and in jQuery, there's this pattern that you'll see all over the place in which you can pass in a JavaScript object with braces, and then I can do style, background color yellow, tile. I can do both at once. jQuery will go ahead and set all those attributes in one go. Okay. Let's see. And again, CSS can do the same thing, right? With color red, background color yellow. Okay. So you can pretty much set that like a style rule in your CSS file almost. Okay. Adding and removing nodes, you can append and prepend nodes into a parent. So in this case, I've got an OL list. I'm going to prepend an LI, okay, and I'm going to append an LI, and you see the result is the prepended item is at the top, the appended item is at the bottom. Any questions? Okay, so just a few other methods. The text method gets you the text of an element. HTML method gets you the actual HTML. Well, it actually sets the text, sorry. If without a parameter, it gets the text. With the parameter, I can set HTML as the contents of this element. If I say .val, that gets me the value of a form control. So an input control, a select, or anything like that. You just use .val. If you want to set the input control, same thing, without a parameter. So that's a nice thing with JQuery. You pass a parameter to get. It's just to set usually, and often you don't have any parameter to get. The wrap method is another nifty one. It will actually wrap that OL in a div. In other words, it'll create a div around the parent on the outside. Okay. OL.remove, LI, that will remove all of its children. Okay. So with the parent, you can say remove, again, pass in the selector, descendant selector. Adding classes, add class, highlight. You can also add more than one class using spaces. You can check has class. So in this case, if item 6 doesn't have highlight box or red text, I want to add highlight. In this case, I'm doing it on all items that have a class of item 6. Okay. Same thing, I can remove class, highlight end box from item 6. If I don't pass anything in, it removes all classes. Toggles are my favorite ones. Toggle class will add it if it's there. If it's not there, and then remove it if it is there. All right, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna try to get through this real quick. The cool thing about jQuery is that you can chain methods together. So I'm doing these two calls. I can actually do one selector, and then I can say .adder, title, .css, I can chain as many calls as I would like, and they get executed in the order that they appear. Okay. This is called Fluent Design. You'll see it in JavaScript a lot. You'll see it in C++ and C# as well. Any questions, comments? All right. Events you should be fairly familiar with. Pardon me. Click event, that's an easy one. Focus and blur. Okay, focus occurs when the control gets focus. Blur gets fired when you tab out or the control loses focus. Same thing, mouse enter, mouse leave. When you mouse over it, mouse out. Okay. Change. Some people got tripped up on the in the test, but change event doesn't fire unless the actual control's value has changed. Okay, since either the page, since it had its initial value, okay, or the last change event. So if I enter text in an input field, right, and I tab out, a change event will get fired. If I tab into it and then I tab out of it, the change event will not get fired. I'm going to skip on. Oops. Again, here's just one methodology for adding events to all these different. I want to add two events. I want to add mouse enter and mouse leave. And this is sort of a common pattern that we use ourselves. Equal $this. I'm going to be teaching you some different patterns when we talk about closures. This example, again, just shows how I can just do $this for that particular li. I can, in this case, add class highlight or remove class highlight on when the mouse leaves the input. Let's see here. Let's the on is a nice way of also specifying events. You can do mouse enter, mouse leave all in one go. So I can on mouse enter space mouse leave, and then I can do this toggle class highlight. So that's sort of a better version of what we just went through in the previous slide. If you want to turn off an event, you just call off on the click event, for example. You may use this, for example, I have a button, and then you click on it, and on click, I turn off click so that you can't double click on it. Okay, people always do that. Let's see, are there people having a hard time getting, okay. In here, okay, good, all right. Just so, again, so you're aware, when you set an event, you're adding to a collection of functions. So that save button can have 5 click events. So I could do .click, it'll add an event. .click, add an event. So you just need to be aware of that. You want to replace it, you have to do off before you add a new one, if you want to just have a single one. Okay. Again, the standard for events is that the callback receives an event object, so you can capture that with whatever variable you like. I do EV usually, so EV.type equal mouse enter. I could add highlight, EV.type equal mouse leave, remove class. So this is another way to know what's going on. There's a lot more things in the event object which you can look at. I'm not going to go over those right now. So what if I add these callbacks on all the LIs, and then I go and I add or append one later? Do they have the same callback? They actually do not. So they would not get the callback. So in JQuery, you can do this syntax here. So OL on, so you do the parent, on mouse enter, mouse leave, then you can give the child. So that parent-child relationship allows me to add LIs to that OL parent and still get the callback. All right, how much time do I have? I already gave you the, we went over this before in class. That's my favorite cheat sheet. I've been using it for over 15 years. I'm not going to go over that right today because I think we're out of time. But I recommend you go to that and just kind of go through and find out some other functions that might be useful, again, for your project. Let's go ahead and